Hello and welcome to Rise of Humanity. I am your host, Chris Karamaya, and today I'm joined by my guest, Flora Sage. Flora is an author and a very passionate business coach who incorporates her spiritual gifts into her work to create a truly multifaceted approach to helping her clients. Flora's teaching platform has helped thousands of clients worldwide to redefine and find success while clearing away all of the excuses that stand in their way. So, Flora, it's great to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Chris. I really appreciate this. And I love your platform as well.
Thank you. So I've been looking into quite a bit of your work and your website, and you've got this, in your coaching, you've got a very cool blend of business coaching, personal coaching, and then you've got spirituality running through all of that. How does that balance look for you between the personal and the business coaching? Do you feel like you're more one than the other, or 50-50? How does that look?
Well, the spiritual just comes into everything because, as I'm sure heard, we are spirit embodied, and everything, especially in business, everything is governed by our spirit and that sense of like, hell yes, like if something is really deep within you and you can feel it in every nuance of your cell, it's going to be a hell yes answer, whether it's in business or in your personal life. And so, everything that I do has that kind of spirit, part of it. And, but as far as like my clients go, I mean, of course, it just depends on if you want more of a business focus or more of a personal focus. But even with my business clients, that spirit part always comes in, just simply because, if something is not resonating with our spirit, it's not going to work, whether in our personal life or in our business. And that's the thing, is that I think, so many people get caught up in their ego and get, caught up in what we think we need to do instead of what we feel inside that we really truly want to do. And that's part of what I really try to help people remember, is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and we are beings, not doing, like we're not human doings, we're human beings. And so it's very easy to get caught up in ego when we do, and when we can kind of step back from that ego and step back from action and just start to just chill and start to be in spirit, then our lives just become so much more fun and so much more exciting, because we start to actually have opportunities and see opportunities that we didn't even realize were there. And, like I said, whether that's in your business or whether that's in your personal life, I try to help people remember how to do that. So it's awesome.
Yes. So do you have to kind of qualify the clients you work with? Can you work with someone that's not at all spiritual?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Because in reality, you really are very spiritual. You just don't realize it yet.
Or do you kind of feel that they need to be aware of that aspect of themselves?
Yeah. Most of the time, people that say that they're not spiritual in any way, shape, or form, after having a conversation with them, I realize, and I kind of point out to them, that they actually are very spiritual. It's let's just say that you feel that you're not spiritual in any way, shape, or form. And I ask you, okay, so what are your, some of your hobbies? And maybe you say, I love to play tennis, or I love to go hiking, or whatever. And so then I ask you, okay, so what part of tennis do you like? Oh, I love the feeling of just getting out there and hitting the ball and just being in my body and just feeling that rush of adrenaline. And just afterwards, you just feel so satisfied and just so relaxed and just so surrendered. That is the epitome of being in spirit, when you're surrendering to the moment as it is instead of how you think that it should or needs to be. That is totally being in spirit, because that is being you at your core essence. And I think a lot of people I think that they just define spirituality sometimes with the religious aspect, but it's totally different. I mean, of course, that's a whole nother can of worms as far as religion, but being spiritual, I truly believe, is just tapping into the core essence of who you are and letting that just leak out into every single thing that you do. And that's when you can really have the life that you really love and the life that you really want,
Yeah, I completely agree that, yeah, it's just something that's there, and you just need to just to be it, really. You don't need to try and do it. So I'm interested, obviously you do personal and business coaching. How do you, I mean, I don't know if this is too abstract a question, but how much of a percentage would you say that success in anything, whether it's business or personal life, is inner world? And I mean, for example, in a business, how much would you say is, getting in touch with that spiritual side of yourself and fixing your mindset, as opposed to learning how to do good marketing and stuff like that?
Oh, this is such a great question. So, the strategy and the step-by-step is a huge part of it, but an even bigger part is your mindset and the frequency that you hold. Because you can do all the steps, right? You can have all the strategy. You can have just an amazing website, amazing sales pages, amazing content. But if your mindset is that, well, no matter what this is, I have to work hard and I have to do this and I have to do that. If it's a have to, if it's a burden, that's what it's going to feel like. And that's the energy that's going to be around it. That's the vibration that's going to be attached to your website and to your copy that you have and to the programs that you sell. It's this burden energy and this frequency. And so when you put your offer out there, there's going to have that underlying frequency or vibration of heaviness and hard work. And people are going to be like, oh, that doesn't feel good at all. Mm-hmm. But when you get into that flow of, okay, I know I've got, all of these steps done. I've got all the strategy taken care of. Now I'm just going to work on my mindset. I'm going to work on my vibration, that every single thing I do is going to make me money. Every single thing that I do is going to totally call in and attract my perfect soulmate client. Then people are going to feel that energy. The universe is going to respond to that. And the thing about frequency is that, and I actually teach this in several of my classes, is that when you want to manifest something, many times people have qualifiers or disclaimers running in the background. So I want to manifest $20,000 in my business today or this month. And then in the back of your mind, you're thinking, oh, but I'm going to have to work twice as hard. Or, oh, but I'm going to have to build my list by 1,000 people. And so you have all these qualifiers and disclaimers that are negating or canceling out what it is that you actually want to manifest. And so the frequency going out isn't the $20,000, I'm going to manifest this. No, the frequency that's actually going out is I need to work twice as hard to manifest twice as much money. Or I need to, and it's just all that well, it's kind of bullshit, actually. All that bullshit subscripts that are running in the background that are messing with your frequency. And so in order for you to really start to manifest and create that impact in your business, is you have to look at those qualifiers and those, like disclaimers that are running in the background that are causing your frequency to get messed up, that's causing all the fabulous work that you're doing to not work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Such an important area to address before you kind of do anything in life, really. Completely agree with that. So in terms of the clients that you coach with your business, do you, target or attract specific people? Because I know you use this term spiritual business. Do you help coaches, or can you just help anyone, really?
Well, I mainly work with high achieving people. And so what do I mean by high achieving people? People that just want to constantly be the best version of themselves possible, that are constantly viewing themselves as the student, who are constantly viewing themselves as how much better can I be today than I was yesterday, and what I mean by a spiritual business is someone who has that spirit of service in their business. Because regardless of what you sell, if the spirit of service and that spirit of I want to help humanity is in there, you are a spirit-led business. You are a spiritual business owner, because it's not just about the bottom line. It's about how can I serve my people? How can I serve the world? And in serving the world is going to serve me back. And that's a beautiful thing. And there's a fabulous book called The Go-Giver. If you've never heard of it, never read it, I highly recommend that you watch it or listen to it. There's just this fabulous audiobook that goes with it. But it talks about, in order to receive, you have to give. And a lot of people feel that they have to have first before they can give. And that's not necessarily the case. You have your time, you've got your talents, you have the things that you are an expert at. And when you give freely of your of that expert status or of your expertise, of your knowledge, and you do it in a way that is selfless, that you do it in a way to literally just help humanity, to help the people that come in contact with your goods and services, with your offerings, that's going to create that ripple effect that will come back to you tenfold. And so regardless of if you're selling a widget, if you're selling services, if you're selling whatever it is that you're selling, if you have that spirit of giving and you have that spirit of being of service, true and utter service, to really help usher people into a new way of being and that new paradigm so that they can truly have what they want and they can truly live their best life, that is when your business is going to just skyrocket. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
But
I'm following along. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, that's
perfect.
really truly the essence of it. I mean, and so that's how you know you have a spirit, based business, is what spirit are you holding when you're helping people? Is it, I'm just helping people because I want to get money? Or are you helping people because you really want to see them succeed and you really want to see them get what they want, know? And there's just nothing else like it when you help somebody and then you see them get what they want and you're like, yes, it's so amazing.
Yeah, I love that. It's perfect. How do you, I completely agree that for me, what I would regard as a successful business is not someone who's just out to hustle and make money, but really wants to make a difference in people's lives. But I think one of the issues that people run into is that they don't feel like they have enough expertise. They have a huge desire to help people, but then when do they get to that point where they're like, okay, now I know I can help people with this specific issue? And, we talk about niching and all that kind of stuff. Do you have any kind of insight on that?
Oh gosh, yes. So if somebody's trying to figure out what their niche is or what their actual expertise is or what their platform is or what they actually know, because a lot of people are like, I really want to help people, but I have no clue what to help them with because I'm kind of a hot mess myself. And I'm like, everybody's a hot mess. That's part of being human, Life is messy. And so what I recommend people do is actually write out your story. Just where have you come from? Where did you start? Where are you at now? And look at all the things that you've been through, all the hardships, all the triumphs, but just write it all out. And then ask yourself, when you were in those darkest of days, when you had just everything coming down on you, what did you do to get yourself out of that? What were the steps that you took? And sometimes it's I drank a bottle of wine, or sometimes it's I asked a friend for help, or sometimes it's I just laid on the couch and gave myself permission to have a pity party. But then the next thing that I did was I grabbed my journal and I journaled about it and I just let it all out. And then I realized, oh, that felt really good. And so that was a step, is first self-care. Give yourself permission to be in the space. Whatever that space is, be in it, honor it, recognize it for what it is. Recognize the wisdom that's held within that space. And then what's the next step that you took? And then what's the next step? Because the ultimate thing is that when we have those dark days, there's always those beautiful, bright, shiny, shiny days after that. But you have to give yourself permission to recognize the steps that you took to get from where you were to where you are. Mm-hmm. And when you can recognize those steps, that's when you recognize, wait a minute, how often do I do this? And most of the time, as humans, we like patterns. We like things that make sense, And so when you can recognize your patterns of self-care and those patterns that you use to get yourself out of where those dark days are back into those light days, then you can recognize your program, because basically that's really what it is you can create any type of coaching program when you look at what steps you take to help yourself get out of that like those dark days or those low spots in your life, back into flow, back into alignment of who you really are and who you want to be. And when you can recognize through writing your story and those and looking at those cycles and looking at the steps that you yourself taken, right there is what you can teach people. That's what you can help people learn how to do, because so many people realize, well, wait a minute, so and so was here and then now they're here. How did they get there? What steps did they take? And that's what people pay for. That's what people want to know. That's why people buy programs. That's why people go to workshops, because they want to know how the author or the speaker got from where they were to where they are now. And it's such a simple process, but so many people don't realize that it's that simple. They think it needs to be much harder than that, and it's really not,
Yeah. So it's about, you've got something within you already. You just need to kind of pull it out and package it up. So
yes,
just to give you an example of myself, because I'm currently in the process of setting up my own coaching business. And one of the struggles that I'm having is I've had, like, the last few years of my life have been like an incredible awakening and journey. And then I've got to this point where now I want to pass that back on to other people and start my own coaching business. But I keep kind of vacillating between, do I need to go and get another year's life experience and then coach people? It's difficult to really pinpoint that exact thing which I've done. So
yeah. Well, and the beautiful thing about being in that space is when you feel you're ready, you're totally ready, and you're probably ready 6 months ago. But then also another beautiful thing too is that when you start coaching people, you go light years beyond where you were, because what happens is when you get into that space of being in service, when you are coaching other people, what happens is you start to answer your own questions. You start to coach yourself while you're coaching other people, and you get off the call and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to take notes. Really, because as you're coaching someone else, you are going to channel that divine information for the other person. And that's also going to help you as well. And what that's going to do is just help you be such a better coach and help you realize that what you have to share is truly perfect right now in this moment. And is your coaching methodology, going to change? Of course it's going to change. It's going to morph and ebb and flow throughout the years, and you're just going to start to master it the more and more that you start coaching people. But if you feel ready, absolutely, just do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is my number one passion. I can't really see myself doing much else at the moment. So I know I'm ready.
Perfect.
So what was the process for you, like, getting into coaching? Because I know, especially looking on your website, it seems like it had quite a few big life challenges. Are they kind of what led you to become a coach?
Oh gosh, yes. To say the least. Yes, oh my goodness. There were so many pivotal moments in my life that caused me to question everything about myself and question everything about my beliefs. And part of those was having a very traumatic event happen where I knew someone was going to get killed before they got killed. And after that happened, I was like, oh my goodness. And then another pivotal moment was hitting the codependency rock bottom. It was bad. I had an affair with a very close friend's husband, and that I'm not that type of person, or I didn't think I was. And I realized, how in the hell did I get here? And I had to stop, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I had to start really taking stock of myself, and I had to start doing the work. I couldn't run away from myself anymore. I had to really just start doing the work. And so what that work looked like was reading self-help books, like literally every single day, calling myself on my own bullshit. And in doing this year after year, day after day, I started to build up kind of a system and a kind of a prescription, if you will, for myself. Is when I saw myself going back into codependent patterns, I could do something about it. I could stop and say, wait a minute, okay, what's really going on here? And I started to coach myself. And so some of my friends started noticing that I was getting myself out of sticky situations. They started to notice I was happier. They started to notice just I was carrying myself differently. And so they started to ask for help. And so I started to, coach them as well. And then also during this time, I was doing some space clearing and home organization for folks. And of course, when you go through people's personal possessions, stuff comes up. And so I would coach them and walk them through some challenging things. And all the feedback that I was given was, oh my gosh, this is amazing. You've really helped me. This is crazy. How did this work?
Yeah.
And, after a while, I realized, well, wait a minute, this is really cool. And maybe I've got something here. So I started to research coaching and what really was involved with it, and realized that you don't need to be certified. It's a unregulated field, but there is places where you can become certified. And so I got my coaching certification, and I was actually really disappointed with it because it was basically read 3 books and take a test and you're good. And there was no practical application. I was like, oh shit, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But I was so called to be of service. I'm like, come hell or high water, I'm going to do this whether I fall on my face or not.
Yeah.
So I just started to say, hey, I'm a coach. I'm going to help coach you, And before, I never called myself a coach. I would say I'm a guide, I'm an intuitive, whatever. But putting that label of coach on myself felt really hard, and I felt like I had no clue what I was doing, but I knew I needed to do it. And the cool part was I realized very quickly who I didn't want to work with, who was not a perfect and ideal client, which basically those are the people who aren't willing to do the work, who aren't willing to dig deeper and be really honest with themselves. And I started to realize who was the perfect and ideal client, and it's those people who are really ready for change and who are willing to do the work. And the work isn't really hard. It's just making a 1-degree shift here and there. It's just, being willing to take one single step forward that you haven't taken before. And over the years, my coaching has morphed and changed, but it wasn't easy. I mean, it was really challenging for me to get over my ego and to get over myself thinking that I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. And the truth of the matter is that if you work the process yourself, if you've gotten yourself out of a sticky situation, you can help somebody else get out of that same situation as well. And, and that's the beautiful thing about coaching, is that if you feel called to be of service, that's your calling, and you just have to start doing it, and you have to, just do it. And when I first started coaching, I actually used a book of somebody else, like somebody else's coaching book. I actually use that as a textbook. I'm like, okay, read chapter 1 before our next session. Because I was like, oh shit, Yeah. And then I realized that I didn't really need the book, and that my clients were like, yeah, this is fine and dandy, but I prefer our conversations outside of the book so I finally just started to just drop the book and just started to just do sessions with the person. And I started to kind of realize, this is really exciting. I actually do know what I'm doing, and I do know what I'm talking about, and this is actually working. And so I think trusting in yourself and trusting in your process, I think, is the biggest key that I would give to any, new coach out there, is trust your process. And again, how you figure out what your process is just write it down. Write down what you've done, in those hard, spaces of your life, and how did you get yourself out of those hard spaces? How did you move yourself through it? And do you repeat that process every time? And sometimes it takes a little bit of doing to recognize what we actually do, but when you can pinpoint that and you can replicate it with other people, then that's a beautiful thing. And of course, each person that I coach is different, but when you can just, grab the reins and trust yourself and trust spirit that it's going to show up during session, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's very freeing to hear that, because there seems to be, I think, a lot of competition in the coaching world about whose method's better, and maybe it's just there is no one that's better, because I've heard people saying that the best technique is to do no preparation and just turn up on intuition, which for them it works. But then you've got other people like Tony Robbins, who's got an extremely structured, even if it doesn't seem like it, extremely structured approach. I mean, what's your take on that?
I would say yes and yes. yes, showing up with absolute intuition, absolute being kind of unprepared, because of course we never know what spirit's going to throw at us. We never know what the other person is going to bring to the table. However, having your methodology is also a really good thing as well, simply because you know that your method works. You know that your structure works. And I'll give you an example. So I have a method that I like to call the bullshit eliminator method. Okay. And the bullshit eliminator method is actually quite simple. You basically do a brain dump. Okay. And what the brain dump is just get everything out. Every single thing that is stressing you out, that's giving you a headache, that's just causing your life to just be topsy-turvy. And it's like all your to-dos, literally just get everything out on paper. Then what you do is you narrow it down to your top 10 stressors. Okay. Top 10 stressors, boom, there you go. Then from that list, narrow it down to your top 3 stressors, and then narrow that down to your very top stressor at this very moment. Now, the top stressor might not be the big elephant in the room. It might not be what you think it's going to be on any given day, but whatever that top stressor is, ask yourself, okay, am I willing to look at this differently? Sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're like, no, I'm not willing to see this differently. And so then say, okay, so are you willing to take action to clear this up?
Yeah.
And if the answer is yes, okay, perfect. Then what are the next steps that you can take? What's one thing that you can do that would help move from where you are to where you want to be? So basically, and I'll give you an example. One time I did this with myself and I was like, I was having one of those days, And so I did a brain dump, and through narrowing down everything, boom, 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 the top stressor that I had, which was shocking, was cat litter on the floor. And I was like, are you kidding me? Because I had just moved into a new house, and my cat box used to be in the garage. Now it was in the basement, and my bedroom and some other things were in the basement. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're kidding me. That is the thing that's stressing me out so much. And I'm like, yes, it is. Am I willing to see this differently? No, I don't want to see cat litter on the floor. That's it. And so I'm like, okay, so am I willing to address this today? Yes, I'm willing to address this today. Okay, what can I do? What are some possible solutions? So I started to brainstorm possible solutions. 1, get rid of the cats. No, that's not an option. 2, put the cat litter box in the garage. Well, no, I live in Wisconsin, so I can't do that because it's too cold for them in the winter. 3, put a rug or something under the cat box. Okay, I could do that. All right, perfect. So I measured the space. I went to a home goods store, got a rug, put it under there, and it's been perfect ever since. And that sounds so trivial. It's like, really, cat litter on the floor? You're going to coach somebody about that? But yes, that's the thing that I like to call the laundry factor. It's these tiny little things that are pulling us away from our greatness. Yeah. It's these tiny little things that are causing us to just get so tripped up and so bombarded with all this other bullshit that we can't see in front of us, And that is a method that I use every time I coach my people. I don't tell them I'm bringing them through this process. But what I basically do is, like whenever I start a session, I say, hey, tell me what's going on. And I let them just share about what's going on in their life. And through that, I hear what their stressor is at the moment. And then through questioning, through open-ended questions, I ask them, are you willing to see this differently? Sometimes I use that specific question. Sometimes I don't use that specific question. But I really get, a viewpoint on, are they really willing to let this go? Are they willing to start to work on this? And if not, then we find out what some other stressors may be in their life, and then we work on that. But I absolutely agree that having a methodology works, because that's something that is going to work and that that you can fall back on. But also be open to spirit, because there's sometimes, because I also do energy work, and there's sometimes when I'm meeting my clients that I'm hearing from them that they're really in need of kind of a tune-up, if you will, for energy work and stuff like that. And so sometimes I'll say, hey, would you like some energy work? Or I'm really being guided for us to do some energy work today. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, sure. So so basically, to answer your question, I think that, yes, I think both of them are necessary. But whether or not you have a specific program or methodology in place as of right now, you don't necessarily have to have it. It does help, but being open to spirit and being totally in flow and present with your client, I think needs to be the number one thing that you're doing whenever you're coaching anybody, because then you can actually witness where they're at right now instead of where you think that they are or where you think that they need to be,
I think it makes you much more adaptable as a coach if you don't have to pigeonhole yourself into I have to follow this structure. When you have that little bit of openness, it kind of leaves space for creativity.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So talking, I mean, you mentioned about the BS elimination. Is that, and then you call yourself a simplification coaches. Do those two kind of tie in together? Is that just, just clearing out the mental clutter of your entire life?
Yes. Well, when you eliminate the bullshit or the BS, you simplify your life. When you eliminate the stressors, when you eliminate anything that's not for your highest good, you start to simplify your life. I mean, if you notice, there's a rug in your house that you hate, and every time you look at it, your energy drops. You get upset about it. Maybe you got it from an ex or something. Who knows? And that's just something that just keeps bugging you. And I know that that's so trivial, but so many people have so many trivial things going on in their lives, and if they would just address those small trivial things, it frees up so much energy, and it causes your life to just become so much simpler. Mm-hmm. And that's what I refer to as the bullshit or the BS, is because it's these little tiny things that we think aren't anything that we don't address that cause the most problems in our life. And so when you can eliminate that, your life just really becomes so much simpler. Does that make sense? I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you work with men and women? Because the vision, when you say that, the vision I get in your head is you transforming like a really busy mum who's got 100 things going on and the kitchen's a mess and all that kind of stuff. Or do you just help? Do you just help everyone?
Well, so I do help both men and women. The majority of my clients are women, but I do help very high achieving men too that are just like, I'm totally in it to win it. Let's do this. Who are very driven. And so, yes, I do help men as well.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm quite interested in the implementation of the psychic gifts as well you use. Is that something that I think you mentioned about it earlier, but is that something you kind of had from a young age and then kind of lost and picked back up again? How did that look?
Well, so I've always been able to feel energy. That was something, I didn't really know what I was doing when I was a kid. I knew that when I walked into a room or something and the energy felt weird, I just could fix it somehow. Yeah. And I didn't realize that was actually tied to my intuition until years later. But the first time I ever remember having an intuitive hit was the day that my mom passed away. She was actually traveling that day to some banquet that she was the chairperson of, and she got into a fatal car accident. And whenever the school staff told me that I was going to be leaving for the day and that my dad was going to be picking me up, I was like, that's a little bit strange. And when I walked into the office to wait for my dad to come pick me up, as I was sitting down, I got my first intuitive hit, and it was in the form of 2 words. And it was, my mom is dead. And it basically said, mom's dead. And it was a little bit shocking because I was like, But what came with that message was this huge feeling of peace and grace and ease. And it almost felt like she was with me. And it literally happened in a split second. As I was going to sit down, I got mom's dead. And I sat with it for just a second, and then one of my other sisters came in, and she's just like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know, because how could I articulate that? I mean, I was 12. Yeah. And so that opened up the floodgates. And it was a little unnerving because it was usually when people were going to pass away or they were going to die, and I didn't like that. And so I tried to shut it off. I tried to ignore it until one day when I was hanging out with my kids, I got 3 pieces of information, basically that someone that I knew was going to die. And it was, okay, so actually just to kind of elaborate just a little bit, because I don't want to be too cryptic. So, back in the day, I was in the Marine Corps, and I was in Okinawa, and I had met someone who was just amazing, and she had a son with someone. And so I used to babysit her son all the time, like whenever I wasn't working and whatever, and like they were going on dates or whatever. And then, so her name was Krista. And then fast forward several years, I was then back in the States. I was out of the service. I was living my life and was working at a store. And I met someone named Pamela, and she also had some kids and stuff like that. And I used to babysit her kids. Well, this one weekend, I was getting 3 pieces of information. The first piece of information was Krista, and then Pamela, and then how tragic it would be to lose a child. Those are the 3 pieces of information. And I was like, well, I don't understand. And so Krista actually had called me about a month before, and she had moved from Okinawa to Texas, and with her family, and she had gotten in a car accident, and she had flipped her SUV in a ditch that was filled with water, and her son couldn't get out of his car seat, so he died. And that was the same boy that I used to babysit. But I was so confused, because I was like, okay, Pamela, Krista, and how tragic it would be to lose a child. And I didn't know why all 3 of those pieces of information were coming in together, because Pamela and Krista, I knew completely different areas of my life. They didn't know each other, but I didn't choose to put the information together. And so it was really like this kind of bee that was buzzing around me all weekend, and I totally dismissed it. Until the next Monday, I got a phone call from someone at work, and they said, did you hear what happened to Pamela? And I said, no, what happened? And she said, well, she was shot, and her son Brian was shot, and then her estranged husband was the person who shot them. Then he committed suicide. And I was like, what? But then she said, Pamela didn't die. She's in the hospital. Brian's not dead yet. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I went to the hospital, and I saw this little boy that I used to babysit. He actually had been shot point blank in his head, and he still had some brainstem activity. So it was causing his arm to move. It's actually called posturing. And it's basically just kind of a nerve movement. And so he looked like he could just get up at any moment. And I walked in and I saw him, and then I saw my friend. And when she got shot, it was just kind of a flesh wound. It was in the cheek and out her neck, and it didn't hit anything major. And I literally was standing there in shock, and I felt responsible because I had all the pieces of the puzzle and I didn't put them together. And I was driving home, and I was just sobbing. I could not stop crying. And when I got home, I was screaming at the top of my lungs to God or whoever the heck was up there. I'm like, why did you do this? Why did you give me all this information if you didn't give me the ability to be able to put this stuff together? And so I just said, forget it. I don't want any information. I don't want it anymore. If I hear it, I'm just going to do the absolute opposite of it. And that's when I shut my intuition off, or I tried to. That's when I ended up having an affair with someone. I ended up giving everything I owned away, moving to South Africa. I mean, it was a really traumatic, 3 years of my life. I got married. I got divorced after 4 months. I mean, it was kind of, excuse the vernacular, it was kind of a shit show. It was bad. I was like, oh my gosh. And then I realized I was sitting on the beach in South Africa with my kids, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I can't run away from myself. I have to figure out how the heck to navigate life, and I need my intuition back. And so I kind of looked up to the sky and I said, okay, peeps, please come back, because I can't do this on my own. But I don't want to know when anybody's going to die, and I don't want to know the next 20 steps. I just want to know the next step. Just give me one step. Just give me one thing to do, and then I'll do it. And then give me one more thing to do, and then I'll do it. And that's where I come up with the 1 degree of shift in my coaching. And right. Most of the things that I teach is all you have to do is be willing to take one step. If you're willing to take one step that you've never taken before, that you will get out of where you're at, and so that's what I did. I moved back to the States, and I started to deal with my own stuff. I started to look at myself and how I was, holding myself back, and all those little small things that I wasn't looking at and that I wasn't recognizing that I needed to fix. Part of that was thinking life was hard, and part of that was thinking that nobody would listen to me because I'm a girl, and all the stupid bullshit excuses that we tell ourselves. It's these, made up stories that we tell ourselves that hold us back. And when you realize that they're just a story and you can rewrite your story at any time, then you can really start to have the life that you want. And so And taking that next step is so tied in with intuition, because so many people are afraid of that next step. They see 3 or 4 choices and they get frozen. They're like, I don't know which one to choose. I'm like, choose anyone, because anyone that you take is the perfect choice, because then and only then will you see the result of that choice. And then you can say, okay, so I made this choice and this is what happened.
Yeah.
What's the next step for me to take now? And where that intuition comes into play is, do you trust yourself? Do you trust in that next step? And that's a beautiful thing when you actually surrender to spirit and trust that next step that's given to you.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. Definitely.
Oh, you're welcome.
Been a big transformative experience for you. So
yes.
There's a question that I like to ask all my guests in my interviews, and that is, what would be your best advice on how people can contribute to the rise of humanity?
Oh, that is such a good question. What would be the best advice that I could give to someone that could contribute to the rise of humanity? Well, that's such a good question. Oh my gosh. I would say to have them really embody the energy of it takes a village. It takes a village. And so to kind of elaborate on that is, we're all in this together. Life is really, really messy. And we all want to be heard. We all want to be loved. We all just want to be happy and have a really, really fun life, And life sometimes isn't fun. Sometimes it sucks. Sometimes it's really, really hard. And sometimes we want to do something and we have no idea how to do it. And having the village mentality and recognizing that it does take a village puts you into that mindset of, yes, I'm an expert at something, but there's also, other things that I have no freaking clue how to do. And if we're all of that mentality that I know someone in my tribe knows how to do this, then what that gives us the opportunity to do is to offer guidance and advice for people when they ask for help, but then also be willing to ask for help when you need it as well, And that's such a huge thing. And it's such a powerful thing when you recognize that you don't have to do this alone. Anything. You don't have to do anything alone. You have to be willing, though, to, when you don't know how to do something, ask for help. And when you know how to do something, offer your services and offer that up. Because when we offer up what we know how to do to people who don't, that lifts them up and lifts ourselves up as well. And it's totally reciprocal. And so when we don't know how to do something and we ask for help, we give the other person the opportunity to shine the light on what they're really good at, which lifts them up and us up as well.
Yeah.
So
that's wonderful. Amazing advice. Thank you for sharing that.
You're very welcome. Thanks for that amazing question.
It's a good one. So could you just share with the listeners then where we can find out more about you and your work?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Well, you can go to florasage.com and check me out. I have a ton of videos on YouTube. I'm always live on my Facebook page at least several times a week, sometimes several times a day. I'm constantly offering new classes and products and services to help you create the best life possible and to help you eliminate the bullshit that's in your life that's holding you back and keeping you from having what you want. So, but all my links to everything are on my on my website, florasage.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Flora. It's been a pleasure to have you on and sharing all this work you're doing and your story. It's been wonderful. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Chris. Oh, and one last thing. I do have a couple free gifts for your people.
Yeah.
The first gift that I have for them, it's called 4 Steps to Make Better Decisions. And this will help them look at and realize why we have what's called decision fatigue, why it's hard for us to make choices sometimes in our life. And I give you a 4-step process. And the 4-step process is actually a process where you can clear your own energy field so that you're really in tune with your own intuition and what you really truly want. And that's really fabulous. And I'll actually share that link with you so you can share it with your people. And then the second free gift that I have for them is what I like to call finish your year strong. Now, it's not just for the end of the year. It's actually for every single month of the year. And this is kind of a more practical thing. What it is it's basically a PDF download that you can download and use to help you get clear on a specific goal that you want to do or that you want to achieve. And you break that one goal down into 4 chunks. And then you break each of those 4 chunks down into baby steps. And that's one of the things that I was sharing with you earlier is how can you start to do the things that you want to do? Well, you just start to take one baby step at a time. And so that's what this free gift is going to help your audience do, is take and figure out how they can create one goal and how they can actually achieve the goal by taking one baby step at a time. So, and I'll also give you the download link for that as well.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. I'll definitely I'll get that put in the show notes so people can check that out.
Okay. Nice.
Awesome. So that is about all for today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and definitely be sure to check out Flora's website and her work. And of course, I'll put all the links that you need into the show notes. She's got some really awesome stuff on her website, and she's doing really great work. So thank you all so much for listening. I'll catch you all next time. Take care. Bye-bye.